And now, for their first time on live radio, here's the debut single from local boys, Sundown Superhero. This one's called...
Well, that was a pretty pivotal moment in our music careers. Since then, we've gone on to release 2 EPs, shoot music videos, play countless shows, and even tour in a different country. But the early days were just a tad different. Here's how it all started. Let's take a quick trip back to 2009. I was playing in a band I started back in secondary school. We practiced twice a week at my then drummer's house, and not gonna lie, we were pretty decent. Mostly rock covers of popular top 40 songs. I didn't have a whole lot of control over the set list back then, but hey, I was a teenager playing in a band that didn't sound like shit. Life was sweet. Before we knew it, we were getting booked to play a monthly DIY rock show tailored towards a younger crowd. Kids would stand at the front of the stage and come up and take pictures with us when we were done. As far as I was concerned, I was living the dream. But one of the coolest parts of this whole thing was that we got to play alongside a slightly older band that were really making a name for themselves. I remember watching these guys after our set thinking, damn, these guys f***ing rip. I bet you're wondering who was in that band.
Yo, Craig, I think he's talking about us.
Well, I mean, come on, who else would he be talking about, Phil?
Anyway, now that I think about it, I think there was a bit of an unspoken rivalry back then. But still, these 2 bands were building a scene and I was stoked to be a part of it. But then, things started getting a little weird. So many things happened in such a short period of time, honestly, it's enough for a completely separate episode. Craig, Phil, and their guitarist Ron opted to part ways with their band on relatively amicable terms. But me, not so much. Time passed, but the itch to play music never really went away. I didn't really know what I was gonna do. Until one December night, I bumped into Craig, Phil, and Ron at Carol's by Candlelight after the show. When after a little small talk over a beer, they looked at me and said,
So, we be doing some thinking.
Yeah, we're looking to start a punk rock band, and I think you might be our guy. You down?
Oh, what, you think I'm gonna say no to that? Yeah, I'm in. All we needed now was to put a pen to paper and start writing songs.
So, let's fast forward a bit here to maybe around 2015. Emil by this time moved out to Toronto, and Phil and I were in Barbados playing a local music scene with some friends of ours back here. We played a steady Sunday gig with some of those said friends at a local beach bar, where I'd often find myself driving home afterwards in the dead middle of the night with just these random song ideas popping into my head. There I'd be blasting Foo Fighters to keep my company, turning the music down ever so often to la-di-da a guitar part idea or maybe squeal some melody into my voice notes so I wouldn't forget. Now by the time I got home each week, I ended up having a ton of song ideas on my phone. One night I was drifting into that stage, you know that stage right between sleep and wake? Yeah, I was listening to some music, and then it just hit me like a ton of bricks. In that moment, I just knew it was time to transition these drunken, tired voice notes from my phone into something way bigger. I flew out of my bed, immediately picked up my phone, and I called Emil and Phil.
Hello?
Yo.
Yeah, man.
Now, I would send the guys the voice notes, and we'd collaborate and expand on song ideas, ranging from structure to potential album and single art, and everything else in between.
Yes, the fellas' dream ain't big.
Now, at the time, we didn't have the money to just rent tons of studio time, so we set out to use resources and gear that we had to pretty much record on our own. One day I remember Phil shows up at my house to put down some drum tracks. We cleared out my entire living room, set up his drum set in one corner, set up my laptop in the other corner, put on some lab coats and goggles,
Because safety first.
and experimented on buying out the best takes that we could. Once Emil was back on island, I'd meet up with him. We'd jump into our rehearsal space in absolute dead of night and track guitars well past midnight behind tired, bloodshot eyes.
You know, burning that midnight oil.
Sometimes I even pull up at Ron's house with a 6-pack of beer and we'd clear his living room out, get some lead guitar and guitar 2 parts figured out. Of course, this all happened in between sessions of Call of Duty. And when all this was done, I'd make my way back home and pretty much track bass guitar from my bedroom. Now when this process was all over, we tossed a rough mix on it.
And by rough, he means rough.
And I mean, we had our demos. At the time, we didn't even know that the majority of these sessions and songs would evolve and become the final tracks for our debut album, Wake Up the Neighborhood. And I mean, with that said, the songs we had were good, but the mixes just weren't the radio quality that we were looking for.
Enter Simon Pike, who our current sound engineer Graham Johnson put us on to, after hearing the quality of our demo tracks. With our very limited budget, it was suggested that we rent a studio for drums only, and record vocals at Simon's. Guitars weren't that big of an issue, as we could achieve the sound we were looking for without a studio. So we rented a small basement studio for drums. I went in to record about 5 songs, trying to max out our studio time, one of which would turn out to be our first single. After a lengthy session of multiple takes,
So much for one take, Tommy. Haha.
we came up with a handful of useful takes we could give back to Simon along with new bass and guitar tracks. At this time, we were waiting for Emil to return to Barbados to record vocals for the EP. So, we started a WhatsApp group with the creative genius and longtime friend Nathan Mack,
We just call him Hippie.
where we would shoot ideas for the release of the tracks, and most importantly, a band name. After shooting a bunch of not so great names into the group, we finally agreed on one we could all relate to. Thus, Sundown Superhero was born. Only thing missing now was a logo, which Nathan got to work on immediately. Emil returns to Barbados and bangs out the vocal tracks at Simon's studio,
Shout out to Creek Productions.
who gets to work on mixing and mastering the final track for our first single. We set a deadline of April 2nd to have the tracks released. We created a website, YouTube, Instagram and Facebook page. You'd have to use our limited time with Emil on island, doing photo shoots and final prep for the release.
While getting some drinks in too.
The final shoot was us piled into Emil's car and driving around the island. We'd get out and he'd snap some dope pics and we'd hop back in and drive to the next location. With the photo shoot completed and final mix of California Dime now in our granny paws, we're finally ready for the official debut of our new single. Up to this point, it was hard to imagine what it would feel like to finally hear our own song on radio. But in just 24 hours, we would soon find out.
And now, for the first time on live radio, here's the debut single from local boys, Sundown Superhero. This one's called California Dime.
What's up, Caroline?